And we're going. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of the Fantasy Holics podcast for the NFL. New league year, who dis? I'm here with Jordan, my co-host. We're here with the Farron, and we're here with Brian, aka Castle Black, and we're stoked to have you here. Before we get started, I just want to go over a couple things. We got our new website out, thefantasyholics.com. Check it out. We got merchandise on there. We're going to be putting articles on there, all these podcasts that we're doing. We have an XFL podcast that we've done already. And then this is going to be the first one for the NFL season, and it's going to be coming out basically weekly, bi-weekly, or multi-weekly once the NFL season comes around. We have a current promotion going on our Facebook page for a T-shirt giveaway. So check out our page there. Basically, share the post, comment with your favorite player, like the post, and then you'll be entered in for the drawing for that. That'll be announced next podcast on March 25th. And we're going to be having a draft pick contest coming out soon. We'll have more details on that later, but it's going to include a little nice package for basically like a team specific package that we're putting together for you. So check that out. That's going to be on the page and on the website. Jumping right into today's podcast, we're going to start out with discussing the new CBA. It is extended until the year 2030. We got 7 playoff teams that are going to be per conference now. So just going to go over a couple bits.
Fine.
So the first thing we're going to discuss is the new CBA. It is extended until 2030. There's going to be 7 playoff teams per conference. Before we get into the rest of the CBA discussion, I want to talk about potential matchups that could have happened with that 7th team. I'll go first, and then we'll kind of go round robin style if you guys want to add yours. So mine is actually going to be as recent as 2017. The Ravens would have made it in the AFC and the Lions in the NFC. Both of those wild card matches would have included or would have been division matchups. Ravens would have went to Pittsburgh, and then the Lions would have went to Minnesota. During the regular season, the Ravens lost both the regular season games versus Steelers. Lions split the season series with the Vikings. I don't think either of those teams would have made the Super Bowl, but a Ravens win would have sent them to New England, where they've been mildly successful versus the Patriots in the playoffs. So that would have been interesting to see. Joe Flacco was still with the team at the time. He's been pretty good against the Patriots, especially in the playoffs. On the NFC side of things, if the Lions won, they would go on to face the eventual champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that Matt Stafford happens to be 3-1 against in his career. So any matchup that you guys want to say that are potentially that would have happened if we had a 7th team over the past 10, 15 years?
Well, for me, the biggest thing, it's not a matchup. It's that Lovie Smith would still be a coach in the NFL, probably.
Yeah, the Bears, I think, would have made it like 2 or 3 more times.
2012, the year he got fired, they went 10-6. I remember because the Vikings got the 6th seed, Adrian Peterson's final game of the season against the Packers. He fell short of the record, but they got the win. But yeah, Lovie got fired. Now he's in Illinois, and things might be looking up there. But I mean, he kind of got screwed over, honestly, in that whole thing. Going 10-6 and getting fired isn't really. The Bears haven't had
the playoffs too.
Yeah, and the Bears haven't exactly. They had that season last year, but that's about it. The Trestman thing kind of didn't really work.
Yeah, they've been more down than up recently. Jordan, any matchups that you have or any teams? I mean, obviously last year the Rams would have made it. I don't know where you're going to go with this.
Yeah, so actually, my opinion is to flip the script a little bit. Actually, is I'm concerned that it's going to water down the playoff teams a little bit. If you look at last year, the Rams entering the playoffs, the Steelers, those are 2 teams that have no business in being in the playoffs at all. So, I'm more concerned that the quality of the playoff teams is really going to get watered down.
I could see that a little bit. Definitely, when I was looking at it, I was going back to 2010, and there's a couple 8-8. I don't think there was any 7-9 teams, but there was a couple 8-8, 9-7 teams for sure. So definitely see obviously some more teams in the playoffs, but seeing some 8-8 teams bringing a little less competition there. Brian, did you have any teams or going back that you would like to see from the playoffs?
So I just did a shot of whiskey, so I
now you're ready.
Necessarily paying attention to what we just were talking about, but I want to say that the most deserving team that missed the playoffs last year was I'm not sure. Like the best team that missed the playoffs last year was probably the Saints. I'm not sure they missed the playoffs, but like they lost in the first round. They have a kick-ass team. They have Super Camario. They have Michael Thomas. They have Drew Brees. Like, they have a decent offensive line. They have a solid defense. How the Saints have done nothing but with after their one playoff appearance or their one, playoff
Super
run,
Bowl win.
Super Bowl win is way messed up. Like, how have they not had more success?
Yeah, they've definitely been some
understand.
underachievers for some years. It's
It's
sad because
ridiculous.
I pick them every year to go to the Super Bowl, and they always let me down.
It's always their year.
It's always
Michael
their-
Thomas had like 145 receptions last year.
Yeah, he's pretty all right. He's not bad at all.
Kamara is as talented as any running back that's ever entered in the NFL.
And that's
But
one of
yet-
those things I don't want to see. I don't want to see teams sneak into the playoffs and take out powerhouses like that.
The Vikings
I just don't-
didn't sneak
I just
in
don't get
though
it.
when they beat the Saints.
Yeah, they've been pretty decent the last couple of
Yeah,
years.
and I mean, let's be
It's-
honest. The Saints, the one year that they did win the Super Bowl, was they were paying their players to hurt other players, so it wasn't exactly a blemish-free, asterisk-free Super Bowl for them.
Sure.
They
There
really
was
had a lot of
asterisks-
sneaks go on.
Asterisks.
Well, I am specifically bitter about that, obviously, because they beat the Vikings in the NFC Championship,
Sure.
but I thought that was probably arguably one of the most talented teams to not make the Super Bowl. Was the 2009 Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, it's bullshit. Don't get me
But
wrong.
no, I get what you're saying. No, yeah, I mean they made the playoffs, but yeah, they did lose early, and who knows? They would have. They actually, I think they would have gotten a different matchup if there were 7 teams in. So I
The
get
only
what you're
teams that would have got a different matchup, actually, none of the wild card games would have been different. It would have been
Oh, really?
7 would have played number 2, and number 2 just didn't get
Oh,
the bye.
yeah.
So it
See-
just
See, for me, this whole shakeup, the number 1 seed is even more coveted, and I mean that's obvious, right? But like, for us as fans, students of the game stuff, extends the excitement of the season
yeah, I mean,
because
you're getting one
yeah.
extra game in the regular season, which we're going to talk about next, but you're also getting one extra game on wild card weekend, and
yeah, and
doesn't want that?
there's teams in the past
love
have
that
kind of
extra
slowed
game.
down at the end. Yeah, and there's teams that have slowed down at the end because they're saving up for the playoffs. They want to save this running back, this quarterback, whatever it is. But like now they're going to be like, we have to pull out all the stops to get that 1 seed because that bye is massive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. That doesn't start until next year. The
Yeah.
new CBA it doesn't actually expire until next year. So none of the stuff that we're talking about is going to take place this year. But it's still fun to talk about because it just got passed and basically have another 10 years, 11 years of football without any stoppages.
One thing I have to ask you guys is, do you think that the NFL kind of fleeced the players on this whole thing?
The
I mean,
NFL has not cared about their players since the 1960s.
Yep.
They don't give a shit.
Yeah, like
they
basically
are
the players get
all-
what 0.8 more % of the revenue share,
Yeah.
and they
I
have
think
to
it's
play
up
a
to
whole
what,
nother
40?
They're
game.
like,
8%.
Stephon Diggs might have blown out a hamstring last year. We don't give a shit.
Yeah, it went from 48
Yeah.
Yeah.
to
Let's sign
48.8.
him to the Bills
Hmm.
for $40 million. No one gives a shit. Like
Yeah.
he's just gonna fucking help people's fantasy teams.
he's going to help my fantasy team.
Right. He's
Really,
gonna
the
help
only
your
thing that's
team,
geared
your
towards
fantasy
players is the
team.
minimum
No.
salary went up.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're losing a preseason game too, so one less game for injury, even if it is the 4th game where the starters don't play.
And also, playoff format helps because of playoff bonuses. Players, they do get a bonus for a playoff game played in, so that helps. That's
There's gonna
above
be, like,
salaries
Michael
only go
Thomas,
through
for
the end of the
example.
season, so
He's expressed his disinterest towards it, but it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be fun.
for sure.
Moving on, like we mentioned, they did add an additional regular season game. So I thought of what are different ideas that you guys have that where they could put that regular season game. I mean, right now the schedule is set up probably better than every any sporting league schedule that happens. You play your 4 teams, or you play your 3 teams in your division. You play one other division in your conference. You play one other division in the opposite conference, and then you play the 3 teams that finish in the same place as you. So where do they fit that 17th game in?
I have an idea.
I have an idea as well. I'll let
Let's
you go
hear yours
actually.
first. No. You go first, babe.
All right. I'm thinking that they basically alternate proximity opponents at neutral venues. So, for example, Buffalo would play teams like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the Giants, Eagles,
Sounds good.
teams that are within not too many miles of them, and then play them at a neutral venue, Toronto, College Stadium. So a Buffalo Cleveland game might be played at Ohio State. Buffalo Pittsburgh, Buffalo Philly might be played at Penn State, playing in Toronto, like I said. So something keep us up in the Northeast. Have all the Florida teams play against each other with Atlanta. So something like that, and then play at the Georgia Dome, which they already do for. It's called something else now, but what they do for the Falcons, anyways. But have maybe Tampa Bay and Jacksonville play at the Georgia Dome or something like that. So yeah, I mean. It seems like a pretty fair idea. You're alternating teams, and it doesn't really give anybody, like, you're not going in and playing. Buffalo's not playing New England 3 times in a year or something like that. What's your idea you got?
So for me, it's kind of how baseball used to do it in a sense, kind of. I say we make the Pro Bowl. Who wins the Pro Bowl? That conference gets one more home game against their. So you know how the winner of their division plays winner of an NFC division, or plays the winner of an AFC, and then every year they rotate that. I say whoever won the Pro Bowl gets the home game.
Okay. And
my
local radio station was talking about it, like where they alternated every year, where the NFC would get the home game and then the AFC would get the home game. So, but I mean that
kind of something like that, yeah. But it would make the Pro Bowl worth something.
Yeah, that I like,
and that could help. But yeah, it's tough because the whole thing about the NFL is the parity and the quality of that. Like you play 8 here, you play 8 elsewhere. So adding an extra game does make that a little tricky, and there's definitely I think there's going to be growing pains
through I think we're the first. See more international games too. Like they've expanded out to Mexico. They've had London for a few years. We've tried Toronto.
China's been on the back burner for a while. There was supposed to be a game played in China, I believe, this year, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, they got.
But I believe there was.
We're not going to talk about right now.
Yeah,
they need to figure out other stuff.
I think the NFL wants to expand their international brand, and I think the most logical thing is they'll end up adding that at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be. That's going to be fun to see too. How exactly they do it. I mean, I'm sure they have an idea right now, but we'll figure it out. A couple other news and notes from the CBA: the active roster was increased from 53 to 55. However, the game day roster was increased from 46 to 48, but 8 players have to be O-line. If you only have 7 O-line, then you can only run 47 players for that game.
I like that.
Substance abuse is no longer results in a suspension. So, you guys think Josh Gordon gets
Free
another
Josh
chance?
Gordon.
No, he doesn't.
No more
He's
chance.
being treated. Well, no, for me, the legality and how the league usually handles it is that I'd have to look at the new CBA. But the way that they used to handle it is that if you were punished under one CBA, the next one doesn't change your sentence.
Okay.
That's how they used to do it. I think he should be allowed to. Obviously, just common sense, but I don't think they will.
We'll
The
see.
reality is, if
definitely
he
got
has
the
a good
talent.
workout, somebody's going to take a chance on him.
Yeah.
I'd take a chance on him in a second.
Yeah.
Condos Minnesota needs another receiver right now.
Who plays football first, Josh Gordon or Antonio Brown?
Ooh, Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I would say Josh Gordon.
Brown's issue is different. I mean, I think there's a mental health component.
All right. And then finally, the practice squad is increased from 12 to 14 players. There was a little bit more to that with eligibility and stuff like that, but we don't need to get too far into that. Like I said, this is all starts in 2021. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go on to our main meat and potatoes of the show. That's going to be free agency. A lot of things have happened, and free agency technically hasn't even opened yet. So we'll be right back and talk about that.
So we're back, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasy Holics on YouTube, and we are going to kick it off by talking about our biggest winners and losers from free agency. So, Jerry, I'll kick it over to you. Who do you have for the biggest winners?
The biggest winner for me would probably have to be the Arizona Cardinals. From a fantasy standpoint, they traded for arguably one of the top 3 wide receivers in the league in DeAndre Hopkins. They tagged their running back, Kenyon Drake, from last year. In the trade with Hopkins, they ended up losing David Johnson. So that helps Drake in a way because you know that you don't have David Johnson breathing down your back. They have, Kyler Murray on a lot of our rankings. He's been in the 3 to 5 range, and so that's definitely going to help him there. They already had Christian Kirk, who's an emerging star. They got Larry Fitzgerald, who just doesn't drop the football at all. He's back for another year. They drafted 3 guys last year, so any one of them could find their way into the rotation. Andy Isabella, be a nice slot guy there. So just overall, from a fantasy standpoint, just the addition of DeAndre Hopkins will open up Kirk, will open up Kenyon Drake. I think that they're my biggest winner. So the Arizona Cardinals.
I agree with that. My thing about the Cardinals, I had them as well, but at the same time, from a fantasy perspective, I have DeAndre Hopkins as a loser because the way that Kingsbury likes to run his offense, similar to the way that Mike Leach likes to run his offense, and I know a lot about that, and they just like to spread out the ball. So yeah. Kirk's going to get his touches, Drake, Fitz, and Hopkins. So he's no longer like that main guy. We saw the games where Fuller broke out. Hopkins wasn't great when Fuller was hurt, or Stills was hurt. Hopkins was awesome. So I think that he suffers, but I think the team as a whole takes a step. I think Kyler Murray is 100% a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year.
Yep.
Yeah. And I do not personally believe that they chose the right running back. I think David Johnson had a down year, injury plagued, new team. Drake came in and played great, but I think that was the reason why the Texans were okay with making that deal. Is because they believe that David Johnson is still a top 5 to 10 running back at the NFL.
Well, they got a second rounder there too, and they pick within the top 10 of the second round too. So they got an early pick within the top 40, at least it is, or it might even be pick 40. And then I agree with Hopkins. You're still taking him in the first round. There's no doubt about that. He's not dropping to the second round in fantasy drafts.
I'm keeping him in all my keeper leagues. I'm still keeping him.
I got DJ in a keeper in our dynasty league, so I'm pretty excited about that. I know our buddy Will's been asking about him, and I told him I'm not trading anybody until I find out where free agency and the draft goes. And now that David Johnson is essentially the man there in Houston, I think I'm going to hold on to him.
Yeah, we had some talks earlier in the offseason about that, and you were like, I'm holding. I was like, come on, just add DJ to the deal. He's a backup. And you weren't falling for it. So
get looks for Perriman too, and I want to find out where he goes before I get rid of him. I don't think I will, but
he's exciting. Maybe he goes wherever James goes.
That'd be nice.
He's definitely going to be a guy I think that gets overpaid just based on his last few weeks of the season.
Yeah,
he was money at the end.
Yeah, he was a
really
top 10 play at the end of the year.
Yeah, he was.
Can't wait till we talk about
an off topic
in Houston.
Where's Jameis going?
There's not really many teams left.
That's the
we'll get
problem,
to the quarterbacks
right?
a little later. But yeah, it looks like that Tampa role is filled now. LA still has an opening, I guess. Chicago still has an opening.
I think LA makes the most sense, but I don't think that they want someone with that much risk. I think that the weapons makes the most sense for James there.
Yeah. He's got a nice run game there. He's got good wide receivers there. And their defense is still, I think it's in the upper half. They get their own James back.
What about the Bears?
See, for me, the Bears, I love Anthony Miller. And I love Allen Robinson. The Bears, I think defense. And I don't think Jameis Winston. But at the same, on the same token, Winston did get that eye surgery, and that wasn't just he's been being told to get that for 10 years.
Yeah.
He refused to wear any sort of contacts or glasses while playing. So there's a good chance. I mean, we joke about it, and I hear all sorts of podcasts joking about it, but like he may not have seen a lot of those linebackers he was throwing interceptions to. So maybe, I don't know, if I was Tampa, I would have stuck with him. I love the Brady signing, but I would have stuck with him.
Yeah, I
It's
would have
gonna
too.
be if he goes to Chicago and you have Khalil Mack and IDP, that could be interesting too. He could get 50 sacks just with Winston on the team.
Just time on the field.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Jordan,
there's
who's your
really-
biggest winner?
I mean, definitely, I agree. From a fantasy perspective, it has to be the Cardinals, and I do agree that Hopkins is a loser overall. I personally would drop him into the second round. It would be maybe early to mid-second round, but I mean, when you're a receiver, volume is king, and he's going to lose targets to Kirk, to Fitzgerald, Drake out of the backfield a little bit. So I mean, I see those targets dipping pretty significantly, and I think a lot of people are going to still take him in the first round, and I'm okay with that because I'm not going to.
Yep. I see him lucky to get 80 catches next year.
Yeah, I mean, every year, if you look at it, he's gotten right around 140, 125 to 140 targets, and that's pretty significant. And, you know, Kirk needs,
He's not
you got to
getting
feed
that.
everybody. You know,
Yep.
he's not going to get that. So if you're looking all of a sudden he's getting, you know, maybe 80 catches, 1,200 yards, 6-7 touchdowns, still a solid season, but is that who I want to spend my first round pick on? Personally,
No.
not for me.
And you'd have to kind of like bank on that too. It's not like in Houston that's kind of guaranteed, where in Arizona it might not be.
Yeah. And even in Houston, I love him. I love Nuke, but like it's not like he was that consistent.
Hmm.
There were games that weeks that he disappeared from me in fantasy.
Yeah,
Especially when Fuller was playing.
they were few and
Yeah.
far between, but it definitely happened. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you didn't see Michael Thomas take a week off last year.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
he's
I
really
don't
good
know
when
if
it
that
comes
was
to
his fault, game plan, the people around him. I mean, Michael Thomas doesn't really have anyone else. So
Yeah.
that is probably why he's so consistent. But 80 catches I would be kind of. I have spent a lot of time around the air raid. I went to Washington State, so I learned that. And Kingsbury doesn't exactly run the air raid, but he is from it. He played in it. He ran it at Texas Tech, and they want to spread the ball around. They're happy. They would be happier with having 4 receivers catch for 600 yards than 1 receiver catch for 2,000.
Yeah.
Just
So
way
the
it
biggest
runs.
winner, player-wise, is probably Kyler Murray.
Yep.
But Arizona as a whole, definitely. I mean, they're going to have a lot of players drafted in fantasy drafts this year.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think Kenyon Drake too, because he's clearly the lead guy now. He had a huge second half of the season, and now I'm drafting him pretty confidently.
Yeah, I'm much higher on him than I was. With David Johnson there, I thought David Johnson was just going to either eat into his touches or make a comeback because I thought he was more talented. But now that he's out of the picture, I'm going to have to start picking Drake.
Yeah. Are you any interest in Chase Edmonds? Do you think they go anywhere else as a backup, or do you think
Edmonds
Drake
is a stud.
is the guy?
Yeah, he is.
No, Edmonds so at Fordham he was a beast. He was kind of how Jonathan Taylor is now. He got crazy amount of touches, and we just didn't know if he would be able to survive it in the NFL. He's essentially had like a year and a half off now, so I'm not worried about it. But I kind of thought they had more faith in him. So to go out and just keep Drake around, that kind of made me. But he's a
Yeah.
backup. I mean, he's a small guy. He's like basically a more athletic Devonta Freeman, in my opinion. But they don't really see him as a never down guy. So
I mean, I think he's a good late round dart throw. Kenyon Drake, even though he did have a good second half of the season, he still really hasn't carried the full load for a team for an entire season. So I don't think we really know how
Since
that's
high
going to
school.
turn out. Yeah, so I mean,
he hasn't.
I think
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds is worth a dart throw. He had some big games last year when he was asked to step up, and I'd take a chance on him as a high-end handcuff.
Before they traded for Drake, like Chase Edmonds was one of the most sought after free agents.
Yeah.
He had the one huge week. I think I might have actually went against him that week. It was terrible. But he had the one huge week when both David Johnson and Drake wasn't there yet. It was. I don't know. I mean, he definitely has the ability to, if he is put in there and Drake goes down for whatever reason, he has the ability to carry the load. It's going to be fun to see. And Arizona is going to be a team to watch. And one of my bold predictions is that they're going to make the playoffs, which I think is super bold because they're fighting with teams like San Francisco and Seattle and the Rams. Who knows if they had a fluke year last year or if they're going to continue to go down. But that's a tough division, and I'd hate to be any team in that division trying to fight for a playoff spot. And luckily, within 2 years, they're going to be having a 7th playoff team because I could see 3 teams from this division making it.
That's one of those divisions that probably why they even made this rule, because that's just such a fun division. I mean, it really is. So I agree.
It's going to be fun. Jordan, why don't you kick us off with the biggest loser since you ended us with the biggest winner?
Sure. So I'm going to take it not so much for a fantasy perspective, but I'm going to start off right now with my Los Angeles Rams. Reason being, they've lost a few big guys in free agency. Michael Brockers, I think more so Corey Littleton, who is very underrated. I think he's one of the most underrated linebackers in the NFL. The Raiders got a really nice deal on him. I'll be interested in the coming days to see if they're able to move any of their bad contracts, Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks. But right now, I think they're losing a lot of valuable assets. They really haven't made many moves, and they're going to be signing Jalen Ramsey, most likely to a big extension here, committing a lot of dollars to him. And, there's not a lot of defensive pieces there except Ramsey and Donald. And it's going to be tough, I think. I
don't know, man. Samson Abukam's quite a player, in my opinion. I think he's a stud. I do. But, yeah, losing Brockers sucks. But, they kind of put themselves in that position. Don't you think? Yeah. They went all in the year they went to the Super Bowl, which I respect.
And scored 3 points.
Well, yeah, wasn't a lot of scoring in that game, and it didn't work. And they put themselves in a really bad place because most teams would rather win a Super Bowl one year and then have a bunch of shitty years.
Yeah.
And they didn't win, and now they're in a bad spot.
Yeah, the foundation has crumbled there right now.
It has, yeah, and it sucks that you have to move on from players like Gurley and Cooks, but they do not have great deals.
So could you see I know they don't need them, but I saw some fan-made Twitter kind of thing where they were saying trading Cooks to Tampa Bay or whatever, so he reunites with Brady. Can you see that happening?
Potentially. I think in the end they may end up keeping Cooks. He is owed quite a bit of money this year, but I don't know what his value. It really depends what the market determines his value is. I mean, I think if he is going to go somewhere, it makes sense to go to Tampa where he's comfortable with Brady, but I see him moving somewhere.
Like I said, they don't need him. They got Godwin and Evans, one of the best duos in the league.
I saw
nice
one
tight ends there.
Fake trade surfacing where they had Godwin coming to the Rams in a Cooks exchange. I can
only
dream.
That is not happening, my man.
Yeah, Godwin's there forever.
Yeah.
Baron, who was your biggest loser?
I mean the Texans. I mean that's kind of obvious. I do love David Johnson. I really love him. But to give up that haul for who I think is the best receiver in the NFL is just insane.
Yeah.
I mean, they got I mean, I can't say it. They got fleeced. I was going to say they got traded. But, I mean, yeah, they did. I mean, that was ridiculous. And everyone agrees. Bill O'Brien, I've seen jokes about him having coronavirus, being like, oh, what's wrong with this guy? No, it's ridiculous. But at the end, he actually didn't make the call.
Yeah, it was.
So I think they're the biggest loser for sure. I'm not thrilled about what my Vikings are doing, but at the same time, resigning Kirk Cousins, fine. We haven't shown the ability to draft a quarterback, although Teddy Bridgewater, I miss him so much. But yeah, and so that's fine. It's trading Diggs for what they got comparatively to Hopkins is magnificent. But then tagging Anthony Harris only with the thought to trade him for a mid-round pick, I'd rather keep a very good starting safety instead of trading him for a mid-round pick we would consider a 4th to 5th rounder, right? Maybe if you're lucky, a 3rd rounder. I'm keeping Anthony Harris for that if someone offers me a 3rd. But so I think that they're not doing great, but they also like to build through the draft. They now have 12 picks. I'm fine with that. But yeah, for me, it's definitely the Texans. They did not get better.
I'd agree with the Texans too. I'm going to go with the Eagles though here. And it's a shame that we lost Brian because he'd probably be arguing with me now. But they haven't done anything to help out their team at all offensively. It's obvious and apparent that they need wide receivers. They didn't go out and grab any. Nelson Aguilar, he's not a stud by any means, but they didn't re-sign him. Now, like I said, the free agency hasn't technically opened yet, but we have a lot of moves and a lot of potential moves here, and there are some good wide receivers still out on the market, and they do pick 21. But I mean, the top couple of wide receivers in the draft are going to be gone, and I mean, I haven't heard any news from Robbie Anderson or Emmanuel Sanders or Brashad Perriman if the Eagles are even talking to them or if they're just completely neglecting it. But they're not doing anything to help out their offensive line. They're potentially losing Jason Peters. He hit the market too. They got to keep Carson Wentz healthy. They basically have Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, pretty good running back in Miles Sanders, and that's about it. And I mean, they're not going to make it back to the Super Bowl or even go far in the playoffs with Walmart receivers. They got to do something there.
That's true. I agree. But they lose Peters, but they drafted Dillard from Washington State, and he learned. He got a little bit of experience. I'm not a huge fan of air raid offensive linemen. I mean, I went to the school that Dillard did, but I wasn't a huge fan of his at the time. But his skill set does fit the NFL left tackle mold, so I think they're fine. I think that their biggest problem is they lost a running back.
Yeah, running back I actually wanted him here in Buffalo.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you did. I mean, dude, so everyone's argument for Jonathan Taylor this year that he got too much work is the same argument everyone had for Singletary. Singletary, who is much smaller than Taylor, had way more, like, comparatively touches in college.
Just didn't hear about it because he was from a smaller school.
FAU, yeah. So I think I was shocked last year that they went with Gore instead of like maybe trying to go after like an Adrian Peterson
or even Howard. He was available at the time.
Yeah, he was. And yeah, for me, the Eagles, I agree. I mean, they need someone to throw the ball to.
They do. I mean, Jeffrey's still there. I mean, I'm not going to say that he fell off the earth and he's traded or anything, but he's still there. But they
hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy.
Yeah.
His whole career.
You giving up on Arcega-Whiteside already?
Oh, JJ.
No, but I mean, they still need somebody else. They
do.
Good names that I mentioned. Yeah. Even if they just grab one of them, pair them with Alshon Jeffrey, put them with Arcega-Whiteside. You got those two tight ends. Run most of your plays with the two tight end set. Miles Sanders is out there, so they got to do something. I mean, there's definitely teams that have done worse. I just think that a perennial playoff team like that, and you hear nothing from them, is kind of unheard of.
It is, but they're also saving money for the guys that they have. So maybe they see someone that they're going to be able to get in the 20s.
Yeah, I mean, and with obviously they picked before Buffalo's original pick, but that's another wide receiver that potentially is going to be there. They don't have to worry about Buffalo jumping up ahead of them to take a wide receiver because they don't have that number 22 anymore.
I don't think the Vikings go wide receiver in the first round. I really don't.
You don't? All right.
No.
Actually,
they do not have good luck.
Do you think they pair their two first rounders and move up, or do you think they take two? Do you think they move back? What do you think they do?
If you're asking me, like as of today, I mean, who knows when everyone's going to see this thing. I go to two DBs. I mean, Mike Zimmer, I cannot imagine the film sessions with him last year with his DBs playing like that. Like the whole season. I've been in a lot of college film sessions, and I've seen people get chewed out, but those guys, Rhodes, Waynes, everyone, except for Harrison Smith, obviously, was probably just getting chewed out. So they need help back there. If I'm Rick Spielman, the GM of the Vikings, I go Trayvon Diggs, and I go probably I reach on Winfield, get another safety, trade away Anthony Harris, boom.
I mean, and that's another team that's really not too far off. They obviously lost a wide receiver, but they could grab one of those three that I mentioned. Or this wide receiver class is so deep. We're not here to talk too much draft. That'll be another pod, so we won't get too much into it. But
for sure,
Minnesota's a good team, and they're always up there with Green Bay to kind of back and forth for the division. So I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon.
Hope not.
As long as they don't put Kirk Cousins on too many primetime games, they'll be all right.
Oh yeah, just keep. I don't want any primetime games, man. I
did
don't
win
care
one.
if I can't
Won
watch
one
it.
last year.
Really? Well, okay, he could have won. He should have won 2 more. The Seahawks game, and that's final game against Green Bay. Like the Vikings should have won that game, but they just played like shit. So.
All right, let's go on to kind of just talking about the big free agent signings, offensive free agent signings by division. We've mentioned a few of them already, or not just signings but moves. Mentioned a few of them already. I'll kick it off with the AFC East because that's my division here. Diggs obviously came to the Bills. Minnesota receives our 2020 first round pick, which is 22nd overall, a 5th and a 6th rounder in this year's draft, which actually were extra picks that we've acquired. So we still have a 5th and a 6th and a 2021 4th, which could be valuable. So basically the 1st and the 4th, and then a couple throw-in picks. Buffalo receives Stephon Diggs and a 2027th. To be completely honest, I mean, I like the trade in comparison to the Hopkins trade. It is a little bit, I don't even want to say overpay, but it's worse, obviously, because Hopkins kind of went for nothing where we're giving away our first round pick. But at the same time, I think we would have went wide receiver in the first round anyways. So get a proven guy or get a guy that you don't know how he's going to turn out. So I'll take Diggs 9 times out of 10. And then another big AFC East move that happened was Jordan Howard to Miami for 2 years, $10 million. The other moves that happened were all more defensive. Miami had a pretty good day yesterday. But those are the big offensive ones. We already talked a little bit about them. So we'll move on to the next division. Jordan, if you want to take over here.
Yeah, so in the AFC West, we had Mariota getting signed by the Raiders. We'll see if that's and I'll ask this question to you guys. Do you think there's a QB battle brewing in Las Vegas, or do you think that Derek Carr is still the guy?
I think Carr's still the guy.
Yeah.
Mariota, I know we tried to do a free agent pod. It didn't end up working out, but my whole time, and since he became a free agent, I figured Mariota was going to be a backup somewhere, and I didn't think it was going to be Oakland or LA or Las Vegas, but I don't think he's going to be fighting for that job.
His best case scenario is Carr shits the bed, and he comes in kind of like a Tannehill.
Yeah,
I think that is his best case scenario. But I believe in Carr. They took away all of his weapons the last couple of years. I mean, now his best offensive weapon to throw the ball to is arguably Waller.
Darren Waller,
who
Tyrell
was
Williams,
barely
not
making
bad.
teams 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, so they need to get him some weapons and stop trading them away. But I think that they got the guys that they want, and I think that he's going to be fine. I don't think it's a QB battle.
I think he is.
I still think long term they're not going to stick with Carr. I think Gruden's still going to want to get his guy. So, I don't know if they look at somebody later in the draft to groom, but I don't see Carr being there long term. I don't think Mariota's the guy, but I mean long term, I think Gruden's going to want to get his guy still.
Hell, I'll take Carr in Minnesota. I hope that's the case.
No, I
him
love
up.
Carr. I think he's very
Send
underrated.
him up. No, me too.
I won't take him here. I'm happy with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'll take Josh Allen.
Of course
Well,
you are. I'd probably take him over Jared Goff right now.
I would 100% take Josh Allen over Jared Goff. What? That's not even a debate.
No, not Josh Allen.
Derek
Carr.
Carr. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Derek Carr? That's not even a debate.
He's
harsh.
making a lot less.
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that. Raiders also signed Jason Witten. Won't be much fantasy relevance there. I think he's coming
Carr's
in just
got
to
a new weapon. Carr's got a weapon right there.
a new weapon, I suppose. And based on having Waller and Tyrell Williams, I guess Witten maybe Renfro's there, so maybe Witten's 4th in line right now. But I think he's more just a veteran presence to kind of help that rebuild a little bit. And I don't see this being enormous news, maybe from a fantasy perspective, but he'll be enormous in the locker room.
Yeah, he's a high character guy. He's there for leadership. I mean, if you guys see him run the last couple of years, I mean, it's rough. I mean, I run better, and I don't run. So, I mean, there you go. But, yeah, I think he's just there for leadership.
Now we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but I mean, I know everybody was thinking about Brady to the Raiders and hooking up with Renfro. What are you guys thinking about that now? Not being able to throw the ball to Hunter Renfro now.
For Brady,
Yeah.
how do I feel about Brady to the Bucks?
No,
Is that
no,
what
no.
this
We'll talk
question-
about that. How do you feel about Brady not being able to throw the ball to Renfro? Because that was a huge thing when there was potential that Brady was going to the Raiders. He was going to have a
He does fit that mold. Yep,
was go-
that's true.
yeah, he was going to basically
Um,
turn Renfro into a star. And now
Well, Renfro was already kind of trending up that way. Towards the middle after the end of the season, we've seen flashes of him. I think him and McCarr are going to be just fine. I don't hate Renfro as like a flex option on certain weeks.
he
Matchup
would have
dependent.
had more value with Brady though, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
would agree. Yeah, just based on, I mean, Derek Carr can throw the ball very, very far,
Yeah.
and Brady can't.
And unless they add another big weapon, I mean, Renfro's going to get targets. So in a PPR league, I mean, he's going to get catches.
Yeah, I think he's going to take a step for sure.
Well, they're in the draft range to get like a Lamb or a Judy, so we'll see. I mean, we'll definitely see what happens there.
They definitely need a guy like that.
I'll do the AFC North. That's the next division we got here. The Bengals, they tagged AJ Green. The Browns went out and signed Austin Hooper, 4 years, $44 million. He becomes the highest paid tight end in the league. So I don't know what George Kittle and Travis Kelce are thinking right now. They also signed Case Keenum as a backup to Baker Mayfield, 3 years, $18 million. Do you guys think Njoku is expendable? Do you think they're going to try to fit in more two tight end sets? I mean, that was probably the biggest question for me with Cleveland. They already have a guy like him, and they go out and grab Austin Hooper, who is better. I definitely don't disagree with them grabbing a tight end, but they didn't really need a tight end.
No, I agree. I think that us believing that he's better is recency bias. I do. I mean, Njoku, when he's been playing and healthy, I mean, he just wasn't healthy last year.
Yeah,
Has been great, and he was ascending to. Well, I mean, it takes tight ends, they say, 3 years before we see what they can be in the NFL. This is going to be his 3rd year, right?
Yeah.
Or his 4th year. I don't know, but he got hurt. So I do think it was a lot of money to throw at Hooper, but his season last year kind of earned him that. But I think that Njoku is expendable. I think he is a nice little trade piece.
he'd be
And
a
I
good
think-
tight end on a lot of teams.
The Browns signing Hooper is one of those things where it's the reason the Browns are because of moves like this, in my opinion. You know,
Yep.
tight end probably wasn't their biggest need. So to go out there and give Hooper a big contract when you already have a guy that's more than capable of making plays for you it's a little silly to me. I mean, they have bigger needs than giving Austin Hooper, what was it, 4 years, $44 million?
Yep.
It's silly.
I think it's a new coach thing. Stefanski, he likes to have that reliable tight end. He had Rudolph, and now he has Hooper, who's better than Rudolph. So
And
I
the
think
thing
that's
is,
what.
And you got 2 target diva tight or wide receivers too. So I mean, that's just gonna like you got another
Very.
guy coming in taking targets away from guys that they just want the ball, don't really care too much about. I'm not gonna say they don't care about winning, but it's more like they're more me guys, especially Odell. So I don't know how that's
Fantasy
gonna play
wise, I
out
don't
there.
think it changes much for Hooper, though. I think he's still a top 5 or 6 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, I would boost Baker a little bit too. I mean, especially now that you got Case Keenum breathing down your back. That's a joke, obviously. But yeah, I mean, probably move Landry and Odell down a little bit, not too much. Boost Baker up, and Hooper stays about the same.
Yeah, Baker loves a good tight end. I mean, they ran a variation of the air raid at Oklahoma, but they feature a tight end. And when Njoku was around, he was getting targets. So
Yeah.
I think that Hooper's going to be fine. If I'm the Browns, the smart move is to trade Njoku. There's still some good value to that name, so I'd get rid of him. I just don't see them doing a whole lot of 2 tight end sets. I see them doing more Odell, Landry, and maybe some Higgins, or if they draft someone.
It's going to be that's a name I'm going to be looking at, seeing if he's involved in any deals, maybe on draft day, maybe before then. And the final piece here was a couple of the guys in our group chat. Actually, the Bengals fan in our group chat is predicting Dalton to the Bengals or Dalton to the Patriots, or possibly even a Dalton and AJ Green combo to the Patriots. He didn't really put too much thought into the compensation. Dalton for like a third, maybe. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on that, or do you think you could see? I mean, Dalton, there's there's probably no doubt that Dalton might be on the move, especially with Joe Burrow coming in. Maybe he stays there for a year to mentor. I think Dalton is a free agent next year, so he could just go anywhere he wants next year. But do you think Dalton could be on the move this year?
He's got to be. I mean, Dalton's not the kind of guy that I want mentoring my quarterback.
Yeah, I think the options are kind of limited where he can go right now, though. We were talking about Jameis a little bit earlier and where he's going to go. If you throw another name, Andy Dalton, I mean, it's really limited who's looking for a quarterback right now, especially we haven't even talked draft yet.
Yeah,
I don't even think the Patriots have enough room for franchise-tagged Green and Dalton.
No,
like
I don't believe
cap-wise, I don't think that they do. And
you got a lot of money in that defense.
Yeah, and Dalton's overpaid for sure, but he at the time deserved that money just because of how hard it is to get a quarterback in this league. But you're still trading that contract, and then Green just got tagged, so he's getting paid top wide receiver money. I just don't think that the Patriots can afford it. The Patriots have to do something because Stidham is not the answer. They're not going to find a guy where they're picking in the draft. So if Bill Belichick thinks he can play with Dalton, let's see what can happen. But
Make it happen.
I don't think he can bring them both in.
Somehow they'll make the Bengals pay like 75% of his salary because that's just what the Patriots do.
Yeah, just take him from us, please.
Jordan, you want to do the next one?
Yep, so we got the AFC South next. So we'll start off with Ryan Tannehill. He got a big deal with the Titans. He 4 years, $118 million. So kicking it off with that, do you guys think that they overpaid? Do you think that Tannehill's season was a fluke?
They can get out of that contract after 1 year.
Yeah, it's very friendly. I thought it was
yeah.
one or two, but if it's one, you're probably right.
Yeah, it's very friendly to the team. And their ideal situation is where he doesn't have to throw the ball a bunch. So this allowed them to tag Henry because they can only tag one. And then they could figure out a contract with Henry going forward. But they don't want him Vrabel does not want Tannehill throwing the ball over 20 times a game. His ideal is 8 times. He's like, yeah, that's some good stuff.
There was a lot of times I was looking at the stats and seeing like 14 pass attempts or 16 pass attempts, and I was like, how, like in today's NFL, obviously you got Derrick Henry there, but in today's NFL, how do you even let that happen? But they won, and it worked. So, I mean, I'm not going to argue with it.
They really came together as a team. Their defense was good. Their O-line was good. They lost Conklin.
Yeah,
to the Browns, which I think was one of the Browns' better signings. But they had their like swing tackle Dennis Kelly, who they just re-signed for pretty cheap. So I think they think he's a guy that can jump in. But they like their formula for success. So and it worked.
Yeah,
I think Case Keenum was
well.
their better signing, but that's beside the point.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe.
And fantasy-wise, I've seen a few people do rankings already, and even within our group, somebody had Ryan Tannehill within their top 100 rankings. And based on the end of the season, I think that he's going to be a little overdrafted. That's not an offense tailored to fantasy production. So, that's not a guy I'm taking even as, not even as my QB2, honestly.
Their best receiver barely got used. Oh, okay, well, last year, A.J. Brown ascended.
Yeah, he came on, yeah.
But Corey Davis was supposed to be their guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't get used until the very end.
Yeah, he's kind of like we've been kind of hyping him up since he came to the league. He's like a Devonta Parker kind of situation where every year you think he's going to be him and he's not.
Very correct, Jerry. That was actually because like every year you think it's going to be him and then boom, it's not. And then when you finally give up on him, oh, there he is.
Yeah, I forgot he was there.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
He does have weapons, though. You mentioned A.J. Brown. You mentioned Corey Davis. They got Jonnu Smith with Delaney Walker not there anymore. And they tagged Henry with Deion Lewis leaving. They're probably going to grab somebody else. I mean, you can't.
They need someone.
You can't run Derrick Henry 17 games or 16 games a year and expect him not to get hurt with this kind of style that he runs. So
his size, too.
Yeah. So with their like Jordan said, I'm probably not touching them in any 12 teams, 10 teams. I'm not taking Tannehill at all. I don't normally run 2 quarterbacks on my team, so I'll grab my main guy and then I'll stream for bye weeks. But Yeah, I'm not touching Tannehill.
I won't
Chance
even
Wentz.
touch him in 2 quarterback leagues, to be honest. The volume's not there.
Somebody's got it in 2 quarterback leagues. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna have them, but
I'm in a couple with some of the guys from our chat and all that stuff, and I'm not touching them because volume is key in those situations for your
Yeah.
second quarterback. And if he's going to be throwing the ball 8 to 20 times a game and maybe completing 10 passes, I want no part of that.
but he could complete 10 passes for 175 yards and 4
Yeah.
touchdowns.
With AJ
Yeah,
Brown, yeah, he could.
Yeah.
For
The
sure.
efficiency was crazy.
It's not sustainable.
And
That's for
he
sure.
has some wheels too. I mean, he's not rushing every game, but he
He
doesn't.
was a former receiver, you know.
Yeah, he doesn't go down a lot in the pocket.
But I'm happy for him. I think this is a great comeback story, regardless.
Then we already talked a little bit about the Texans trade earlier. Obviously, they got fleeced. But from a fantasy perspective, what do you guys think of David Johnson this year?
I'm buying him. Second round, for sure.
I'm biased because I have him in our dynasty league. I like him. I like that he's going to have another chance to be the guy. He basically just has to stay healthy for me. I mean, we know what he could do. He's and somebody else mentioned, I forgot who it was. It might have even been you, Jordan, but he has to. They're going to have to use him because of the compensation that they
Mhm.
gave up to get him. So you're not going to trade DeAndre Hopkins and not use David Johnson as the guy. in
Yeah,
return.
they would look silly.
So
Yeah,
if
he's
that
the
was you
guy.
that said it, I apologize for stealing your thunder, but I definitely agree there.
He's basically, if you take Duke Johnson and combine him in a laboratory with Carlos Hyde, you're going to get someone with the skill set of David Johnson. So
No concern that he hasn't averaged over 4 yards a carry the past 3 years.
He's been hurt a lot.
he's been on the Cardinals.
Yeah, they haven't really been good
Yeah.
either.
The worst. I have never seen an O-line worse than the year that they had Adrian Peterson. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. They had him because Johnson got hurt running behind that thing. It was a liability.
They earned the right to pick first overall last year, and they earned the right to pick, what was it, 9th or 10th overall the year before. So obviously they haven't been good the last couple
Yeah.
of years either. So you're not going to have a run game in those situations, with the exception of the Giants, I guess. Let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins' replacement there.
Yeah, so Randall Cobb got 3 years, $27 million. I mean, when you look back, I mean, I don't really know what the Texans are doing. Their offense will be fun to watch this year. I feel for Deshaun Watson more and more by the day. He's being asked to do it all. I mean, Cobb's a guy, even in the past with the Packers, when he's gotten volume, there's still not a high production. I looked the 1 year and he got, I think it was 129 targets to 1 year. It was a very high number, only 80 receptions, 800 yards, and it wasn't significant. And I don't think that he's really done a ton when he does get targets. I think he'll get it here just because, I mean, what options do they have? But he's going to have a very low ceiling.
The other two guys are burners, deep field
Right.
burners. I mean, Stills and Fuller, and neither of them have shown the ability to stay healthy throughout an entire season. So, but that's a lot of money to give a guy who did what last year? I mean,
Not much at all with the Cowboys.
yeah.
They basically don't have a number one right now. You got two burners and you got a slot guy. They don't have a first round pick. So it's like, what are they doing? Where are they going?
Do they have a second?
I actually, no, I don't think they do it.
They got
don't.
one with David Johnson.
They did get one. So I think they draft someone there, and maybe that's someone we're looking at in like a deep dive dynasty type of situation.
Probably looking at like a Jalen Rieger or Chase Claypool or something like that.
I think those would be good fits.
Yeah, I mean they basically got 3 number 2s right now, and that's not going to do much there.
And
Are
no
you guys
tight end.
knocking Deshaun Watson down a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm still snagging him just because of that running ability and his
Right.
gamer mentality. I'm gonna if I'm going like I'm not gonna draft a quarterback till late, he might be like a money pick.
Yeah, and I think he might slide a little bit just based on Hopkins being gone, and I'll take him all day if he slides enough.
I think, yeah. I mean, I don't think, like last year we were talking about the potential of Winston. Like Winston was my guy last year, and he was sliding to like the 10th, 11th round. I don't think Watson is going to go that low, but if he's there in the 10th round, he's going to be my pick. He's going to be first quarterback off the board for me right there. I'm thinking more like what 7th, 8th round. He's probably going to start going now instead of most of the consensus rankings that I've been seeing have him between like 3 and 5, along with Kyler Murray. You kind of got Mahomes, Jackson, and then it's Murray and Watson the next two. So he definitely drops from there.
For sure. And I think the last signing we have in the AFC South was Phillip Rivers to the Colts. I don't expect this to have much fantasy implications for Rivers. He wasn't very strong last year. He's reuniting with Frank Reich there in Indianapolis, but I don't foresee him having a huge impact there.
No, I think my days of drafting Rivers is done. I'm more concerned about like your T.Y. Hilton, your Marlon Mack, and your Paris Campbells and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm probably not gonna go near any of them.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see who the Chargers pick to replace him. I've read that they're committed to possibly letting Tyrod start a little bit, and I'd imagine that's going to have an impact on Keenan Allen, Mike Williams.
And that's why I wanted Brady there. Ryan or Farron, any thoughts on Rivers?
I think for the Colts, I think it's a much better option than Brissett. But at the same time, the Cardinals the Chargers. I think they're going to suffer unless they draft a rookie, but then they're going to be dealing with the rookie pain, like the growing pains of a rookie. Maybe they go after Winston. I do think that Winston there would be money, just because of the weapons, but it's not exactly reliable.
Yeah. Yeah, not too much fantasy wise there. Moving on to the NFC East, basically the only team that really made any fantasy type moves is the Dallas Cowboys. They kept all their guys. They tagged Dak. They signed or re-signed Blake Jarwin, 4 years, $24.5 million, which is he basically becomes the tight end one there. And we have a really nice sleeper article on him. One of our newer guys on the Fantasy Holics page put out a nice article on Jarwin, so give that a read.
Very good.
Check it out on Facebook. And then
it's a fun read too.
Yeah,
it is a really fun read. Yeah, he puts a good spin on it.
That was actually his when he applied to be with us. That was his write up there, and he was so excited about it. He wanted to put it on the page. So we're like,
it was. That's awesome.
Knock your socks off. It was a lot longer though. It was definitely a lot longer than what he.
Well, yeah, we got to shorten it. So.
Yeah. Well, we all had fun. I mean, not really had fun, but we all enjoyed reading it. Those of us that did read it when we first saw the longer version, and then the short version is a little bit better because you don't have to read as much. And Amari Cooper stays with them for 5 years, $100 million. It's interesting. He turned down an extra, $20 million from the Redskins just to stay with the Cowboys. So didn't really chase the money there. He still got paid, no doubt about that. He's making $20 million a year average, but he turned down some money with the Redskins to stay with the Cowboys, and thinks that he could help bring them a championship. And like I said, the Giants made some defensive moves and some not fantasy moves. The Redskins didn't really do a whole lot of anything. They made some defensive moves, and then the Eagles, we already talked about them earlier. So really the Cowboys are the only team that really did anything, and they didn't really add anybody. They just kept their guys.
I think that the other teams, the Redskins and the Giants, not making the big splashy moves or reaching for that type of thing is probably for the better. They haven't had a whole lot of success doing that in the past. We've seen a lot of teams building through the draft recently, so I think that's good. But yeah, Cooper choosing them over the Redskins, I think that comes down to Dak.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with what you said about the other teams. I mean, like I said, the Cowboys didn't go out and grab anybody new. They just kept their own guys. It's going to be fun to see Dak and Cooper for if they sign Dak long term for at least the next 5 years. They got another really good wide receiver there, Michael Gallup, and we also can't forget about running back. What RB3 for a lot of people, Ezekiel Elliott. So they're going to have a good offense. It's basically just comes down to Dak kind of taking the next step and that defense continuing to be good. They haven't really been bad. And right
getting
now, I
better.
think they're the favorites. Yeah, definitely getting better.
Every year they are, except they lost Byron Jones.
Oh, yeah. That's
huge.
He went to Miami. So you got a nice little chunk
Huge.
there.
Yeah.
Few dollars.
Yeah. a little bit of money.
He can afford to go out to eat every night now.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the NFC East or Dallas or anything, Jordan?
The only note really is you mentioned the write-up that we have on Blake Jarwin, but I do think that he's a good tight end to take later in fantasy drafts. Usually I take my tight end a little later, kind of a dart throw tight end. I hope that you can find a good one on the waiver wire if your dart throw doesn't work. But I think Jarwin's a guy that's worth taking a chance on if you want to roll, see what his target share is in the beginning of the year. But I'm definitely going to take him later.
Yeah, Jarwin for me is kind of like Mark Andrews for me last year. I wanted to get Mark Andrews wherever I can, but I didn't want to take him too early. So if Jarwin's there, 13, 14, 15th round, I'll definitely grab him and see if I can roll with him for a couple weeks and see what happens.
Yeah, he could be one of those studs that you find like what I thought Disley was going to be for me last year until he got hurt.
Yeah, and then what's his name kind of emerged towards the end of the season.
Hollister.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did he resign in Seattle?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not yet.
Yeah, there's still a lot of names out there.
Tons of names. Like I mean, we've heard a lot of big names, but we are still just dipping our feet in the free agency pool.
I haven't even scratched the surface. I got a couple of names that we haven't even mentioned yet that we'll get to. In the NFC West, another one where the only one team is really kind of making moves. We already talked about them a little earlier, so I won't get too much into them. But I did want to bring up we talked about Hopkins going there. If you could think, what is the worst trade that you could think of that's happened in recent memory? Because, I mean, this Hopkins trade has to be up there. So any trades that you could think of that are worse than that or are on par with it?
Just a giant sigh. That's all you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that the Seahawks trading what they traded for Harvin, what was that, in 2014, 2013 or whatever? I think that was a terrible trade. But my team, the Vikings won that trade for sure. But, I mean, you either overpay or underpay, I guess.
Yeah.
There's, like, no one's sitting here being like, God, that was perfect value for both teams. Like, we're here talking about Diggs. The Vikings got more than they probably should have for a guy that clearly didn't want to be there. And then the Texans got way less. So we're not really talking about anything being fair. So I think that I'd rather be the Cardinals getting that trade.
I mean, if 3 years ago, this trade doesn't look bad at all. This is actually a really even trade, and in real life and in fantasy. I mean, if you were to have David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins 3 years ago, when David Johnson was at the top of his game, 9 times out of 10, you're probably taking that because you'd probably want the running back in that situation.
The Texans are winning that deal.
Yeah. And now it's a couple years later, and David Johnson really hasn't been up there, and now everybody's Texans fan want Bill O'Brien's head.
All it's going to take is for David Johnson to have a good year. Just like a good, not even a great year. Him looking like the David Johnson of old, fans are going to forget.
Yeah. 1,000 yards, maybe 8 to 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, 50
Hindsight's
catches.
2020.
Yeah, exactly. So we're sitting here talking about, but like talent-wise, if you look at the raw talent of each player, it is arguably fair.
Yeah, it's not bad when you think of it like that. Just right now, on paper, it's definitely not a good-looking trade for the Texans.
Agreed. Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, we got a whole season to play.
Then shifting to another guy in Arizona, too. We talked about Kenyon Drake a little bit. How high are you guys drafting him next year?
I think he's going to go around the same area that Damian Williams went last year. I think he's more talented than Damian Williams, and I think he has a better opportunity in Arizona than Damian Williams had in KC. I was not a fan of Damian Williams at all, but I think that he's a number one running back on his team. There's only 32 of them, and running backs are a hot commodity in fantasy football. So I'm thinking late second, early to mid third. Not really. I don't think he's going to last lower than that, and I wouldn't take him higher than that.
He's one of those guys that I would take if they fell to me at the right spot, but I have a feeling he's going to get reached on.
Yeah.
I would take him. Maybe I would not touch him in the second.
And people have recency bias. And
they do.
I don't want to steal your thunder here, Jordan, because you made these notes. But he finished the season with 800 yards and 8 touchdowns, and that's what people are going to go back to and see that. Okay, he fits in that Arizona offense. I'm going to take him here in front of Joe Mixon, and you're going to be called an idiot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did he ever score a touchdown as a Dolphin?
Yeah, I think he
did. He
didn't he have a couple 200-yard games
point.
versus?
No, there was. I remember some
Bills.
stat when he finally started going off. It was like, this is his stat line with the Dolphins, and then his stat line with the Cardinals, and it was absurd.
He pretty much killed the Bills in like 2 games, and there's no way they didn't have a touchdown.
Of course, you
there,
remember
so.
those games.
Well, he had like a couple.
Oh, I tell you, he had one
That's all that
touchdown
matters.
against the Patriots for sure. On the what were they? They were lateraling the ball and all that stuff. That was him who had the touchdown.
Oh yeah. That was definitely him there.
And maybe it wasn't touchdowns, but they were comparing what he did with the Dolphins compared to what he did with the Cardinals, and I think it is recency bias.
He had 1 touchdown in 2017 total. Actually, no, I was looking at the wrong number. He had 3 touchdowns in 2017.
I was wrong.
He had 2018. He had 4 touchdowns. So he wasn't. He never really kind of broke the season open, but he did.
Looks like he had 15 total touchdowns with the Dolphins. Yeah, it's more than one.
Whatever
Or
I
one.
read was wrong. Regardless, his numbers and his efficiency with the Cardinals was much better.
Yeah. See, I always target upside in the early round. So, I have him ranked as my running back 12, I think, right now. I like upside. So, he's going to have a ton of volume. He catches the ball a little bit out of the backfield. And I'll take him as I take him more as a high-end running back, too. But that's where I'm drafting him.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be too bad. There's definitely running backs around that area that I'll probably take over him. You're probably looking in the range of, like I said, a Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon,
Miles
guys like
Sanders.
that. Yeah.
I'd rather have all those guys.
Yeah,
to be
me too,
honest.
definitely.
Yeah.
James Conner.
That's the one guy where I'm like starting to have questions though.
We'll see what they do.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh does. Out of the NFC North, was this me or you? I don't remember.
I can go ahead
Doesn't
and
matter.
start
We
if you want.
got the
Not
big
much news here.
transaction of Jimmy Graham going to the Bears on 2-year, $18 million deal.
Yeah, he hasn't been anything since New Orleans.
But he keeps getting paid.
Yeah.
He's a good businessman. That's for
He's
sure.
like the Sam Bradford of tight ends.
And I forgot, I think I saw something where the Bears have 8 tight ends they're currently paying for the upcoming season.
8?
8, yep, that are still on their payroll for the upcoming season. They still have
Shaheen, Burton, who?
Trey Burton's still on there.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty big deal, but it was a lot of lower end guys. Some guys they already cut and released, but there was 8 different tight ends they're paying for this year.
Yeah, they're going to be a mess. They're going to be battling for the defense is really what's going to keep them in games, but they're going to be battling with Detroit for last place.
Well,
I don't know. Too bad we don't have any NFC North fans.
Oh yeah, God forbid. I just told you I could do it. The Packers, they let Martinez go.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's defense. They haven't done much for the offense. They lost Bulaga, the right tackle. I like what Detroit's doing in terms of their team's chemistry. Bring in some of the right guys, kind of what the Dolphins are doing. And that's kind of the theme is that former Belichick guys. We've been seeing a lot of pushback from their teams originally about what they do. They get rid of guys, they have the growing pains, and they bring in the right guys. So I think that's But the Vikings, I mean, I have already talked about this. I think Thielen is actually going to be the biggest beneficiary. Thielen and Cook. But Cousins has a lot more pressure on him now.
Yeah.
Because he has one less weapon. Maybe in best case scenario, he gets a top 7 rookie receiver. The Vikings haven't been specifically very great at drafting receivers. I mean, look at Laquan Treadwell. And but they're better in the later rounds. So we'll see. But the NFC North has been more about the meat and potatoes as opposed to the flashiness that we like to see for fantasy.
Yeah, it's quite a bit the opposite of what the NFC West is, but it's another team or another division where I think Chicago is kind of it's going to be bringing up the rear, but I'm kind of contradicting myself because I just said that Detroit was going to be fighting with them, but now that I'm thinking about their weapons and what they're doing on defense, I think Detroit could kind of maybe sneak in as a third NFC North team in the playoffs, especially when they move to 7 teams. They could be up there. I mean, Galladay is one of the better receivers in the league. If Kerryon Johnson stays healthy, he can be all right there. And Marvin Jones, when he stays healthy, he's a pretty good receiver too. Plus TJ Hawkinson, mix that in. Stafford's got a couple years left with a strong arm. So offensively, they don't really have to do much except for beef up the offensive line, and they have been building that defense too. So I kind of like them as a dark horse as well. But I mean, it starts with Minnesota and Green Bay, and then like Detroit's gonna have to fight like hell to kind of keep up. And I think Chicago's just trending in the wrong direction, especially offensively. But I mean, the defense is going to carry them a little bit.
Chicago's just trying to find a quarterback.
Yeah,
they need to. I mean, they're wasting Allen Robinson and all his targets, but he can't do anything with that.
Part of me thinks that it almost comes down to coaching. I know we saw a big first year from Nagy, but last year was a disaster. Sorry, I was away from the screen, boys. I was prepping a pizza. But I was on it. There were not.
Okay, good.
I do.
Good call.
I mean, you might say I'm a fan of a pineapple on a pizza. I'm a fan of a good Canadian bacon pineapple. We can talk about that on another podcast. We can really hash that out.
A pizza draft.
Pizza draft would be I would find some good sleepers, let me tell you. We'll
have to get
Portland. But yeah, the NFC North has been more, kind of what it normally is. It's not really the Diggs thing was the most exciting thing for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean they haven't really not a lot of huge major moves there, but it's gonna those teams hate each other, so it's gonna be fun to watch that division.
That's
next
for
year.
sure.
And finally, the final division that we got, NFC South. A few moves here. The biggest one, I think, is Brady to the Bucks, which is supposed to be announced on Wednesday. I don't know when this is being broadcasted, so I won't say the date, but it's supposed to be announced on Wednesday. Devonta Freeman has been released. I think that's long overdue.
Thank God.
He's decent. I won't even say he's good. He's decent when he's healthy, but that's a huge if.
It's too bad Eric's not in here. We used to have some pretty epic debates about Devonta Freeman versus Tevin Coleman, so that would have been fun.
and what's his name? Ryan. He's a huge Devonta Freeman fan. He
owns him in Dynasty. That's why. That's all.
That's the kind of guy he is. He just latches on to a couple players and just falls in love with them, and he'll just make up stats just to make him seem better.
Yep.
Hayden Hurst, he leaves the tight end trio in Baltimore and goes to the Falcons, kind of replaces Austin Hooper there. Drew Brees, I think it was inevitable that he was coming back to the Saints. He signs there for 2 years, $50 million. I'll let you talk a little bit about this one, but Teddy Bridgewater goes to the Panthers for 3 years, $60 million. I know you're excited about that. And with him going there, Cam Newton was given permission to seek a trade. So he's another name that is a quarterback that could be looking for a team with not many teams left.
Chargers,
Bears.
Yeah.
The Dolphins. I mean, we got
3 years ago. Did you ever think we'd be talking about Teddy Bridgewater taking Cam Newton's spot? Like, how crazy is that?
I thought Cam Newton was a Panthers lifer there.
Yeah. And that's just the NFL.
He just needs a rejuvenation. He's still got. I mean, he needs to slow down on his running and getting hit. But I like him. I mean, I'm a huge Cam Newton fan. I always have been. I like the big-bodied quarterbacks. Um, I mean, he reminds me of a Josh Allen, or Josh Allen reminds me of him. And I want to see him succeed again. I just love watching him play. I love that he gives the football to a fan every single touchdown, even his teammates' footballs he gives the fans. It's not just his rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, I want to see that again, and I want to see another successful season from him.
Yeah. I think he's a misunderstood guy in general. He gets a bad rap. I do believe he's a good dude, and like
He's a
what you
bad
said,
trusser, though.
yeah. I mean, he's going to go somewhere and he's going to start. He's not a backup quarterback, but Teddy Bridgewater going there, he fits the current scheme and what Matt Rule wants to do. And it's high completion, high accuracy throws. Go deep when you need to, but also be able to, dump it off to our amazing running back. And that was something that Cam had to get used to. He was never, ever accustomed to that style of offense. So I think that the emergence of McCaffrey, honestly, was the original catalyst for us seeing the end of Cam Newton. Just because Cam was the runner and he was the main passer. And now we got this guy that you have to adjust your style of play to fit because McCaffrey demands touches. I mean, he's a freak. He's a beast.
He's number one, number two, arguably. You can't deny giving him the ball.
Yeah, you have to. So I think that's a great move. I think that the Breeze thing may not have happened if Teddy didn't decide to go. I think there's a reason we saw those two things come out very close to each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, boom, boom. You
don't think Breeze would have signed there? Or you don't think Breeze would have came back?
I think that Breeze might have done a year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If Teddy came back.
And Teddy has the
believe he did
long-term
too.
option. Yeah.
Yeah. The Saints brought him back for a reason. They believed that he was going to be the guy. Maybe Breeze retires this year, and they won. What did they win? 4 to 5 games with them?
Yeah.
So they believed in him.
And Michael Thomas stayed on pace and broke the record with him. So
he goes to a team in a division. I think that's a juicy matchup for Teddy, though.
That's a juicy matchup.
I do think so.
What about Brady versus Breeze for the next 1 to 2 years? 2 times at least. What about that matchup? That's going to be fun. Matchup.
Yeah, it's always fun.
It's going to be fun, but weird as hell to see Brady in that jersey, dude. Like those ugly, cuter, and
I saw some photoshops today, and it's just not natural.
It doesn't look good. But I have heard that the Bucs are looking to change their unis this year.
Yeah, it's not much. From the little Twitter pic that I saw, it's not much different. I mean,
oh god,
when I think of jersey change, it's like I want to see like a full-blown, slightly different color, different logo design change. I don't want to just see another I don't want to see the same red and just like your black stripe is somewhere else. So I don't know how exciting it's going to be. Maybe, hopefully, they were just teasing us and they're going to have something different. But I don't know. I kind of like their jerseys how they are now. I like the new look style that they kind of have.
They're horrible.
They're all right.
I would argue for a long time. I used to think this. Them and the Titans had the worst jerseys.
I don't like the Titans.
No.
I don't like the colors on the Titans either. The powder blue I like the powder blue with the black that Carolina has. I don't like it with the Titans for whatever reason.
I think the Bucs got to go back to the creamsicles.
Those are like
classic,
voted one of the ugliest jerseys in all of sports.
Well, I disagree. I think they're fire and bring them back for Brady.
You didn't have a vote, I guess.
Apparently not. No one asked me.
There's like 499 people that voted no.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Make me feel even worse, Jerry.
It's going to be fun. You got Brady versus Breeze. You got Brady versus Matt Ryan. Brady versus Bridgewater if he lives up to the hype. A lot of offense in that division still. I mean, like I said, Freeman was released, but that's nothing really there. You got wide receivers galore in that division. It's going to be just a whole bunch of balls flying all over the place and a lot of fun games. And another bold prediction I got is we're going to see the Bucs versus the Saints, the first Sunday Night Football game of the year.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that the Falcons got to go running back, though, in the draft. I know we're going to have another draft podcast, but for fantasy purposes, I'm not trusting Ito.
Or Quadri.
Oh yeah. I'm not trusting either. So honestly, out of college, Ito Smith was fun to watch at Southern Miss, but he's not an NFL starting running back.
I
So
thought
they
were
need
good-
someone.
Thought they were good cuffs, both of them. If I ever,
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to grab Olsen and Ito, not the same league, but like just various leagues. I tried to grab one or the other because you knew Devonta Freeman was going down.
Of course.
So, but I mean, and it ended up really not mattering. But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see him going running back too. They pick 15th.
I believe it's 15th,
I
and
think that's a
our
little too early for Jonathan Taylor. You're probably
Yeah.
looking at like an edge rusher there, but
I trade
Yeah.
down, but I mean, if you have to, if no one's biting, like in our admin mock draft we just did, Jerry, Eric did choose DeAndre Swift to them, and while I think Taylor's better, I do think that they're going to be targeting one early.
yeah, and they need to. They need a running game there. As much as I want to see him air it out to Julio and Calvin Ridley, they got to be able to run the ball too.
Yep, keep defenses honest. For sure.
Speaking of running backs, one of the names that we haven't mentioned, Melvin Gordon. I haven't heard any contact from anybody. My original prediction was going to Miami. Now he still can, but they didn't really give Jordan Howard a huge contract and huge money, so it's definitely a possibility still there. But I figured that he'd go there and kind of be the lead guy. Jameis Winston, we brought his name up a couple of times. Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, and Brashad Perriman, a couple wide receivers, and there's a lot of wide receiver needy teams out there. I wouldn't say Buffalo's one of them anymore, but I wouldn't mind getting my hands on somebody like Perriman. I'd like a taller receiver. Diggs brings a lot of speed. John Brown brings a lot of speed, and Cole Beasley is nice over the middle. But we need like a big, tall possession guy, somebody that you can just throw the ball up and grab it at the back of the end zone. And Eric Ebron is another name. He's not like he had that huge year in Indy 2 years ago, but he's still a big name that's out there. Any other big names offensively, fantasy wise, or where you'd like to see him go?
Ebron? I think
Anyone,
Ebron's
just
going to
any-
go back. I don't think Doyle's enough for Rivers.
Yeah, I can see that
I
happening.
think him coming back would be good. In terms of the other guys, dude, I mean, Gordon it's so crazy we haven't heard more speculation because he is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He's going to be one of those dudes that holds out for more money and ends up having to choose less money than he wanted, and then he's going to go somewhere. I mean, heck, go to the Falcons.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna go somewhere that's going to give him number one money and number one playing time. So it's just going to be fun to see where that happens. I just haven't heard his name for anything.
What do you think about the Patriots?
I don't know. I don't like any running backs in New England. I traded away Sony Michel. I mean, it's 1 week it's Rex Burkhead, 1 week it's Brandon Bolden, who's
That's
2
true.
carries for 2 touchdowns.
But they're
And
going to need someone dynamic if they're thinking about going with Dalton.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, I don't think they're going to give him the kind of money.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to commit big money to a running back.
Yeah, I would agree. It was just a pipe dream.
Yeah, no, not for me. I don't want to see it happen.
I know you don't.
He'd end up going for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns over the 2 games with the Bills.
I'm
But
for it.
I'll be drafting him in fantasy if he goes to the Patriots then.
Just for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But we got to wrap it up. It kind of ran a little long. It was fun, but definitely, I mean, we got a lot more episodes to do throughout this season. This is just episode number 1. We still got the draft. We still got the rest of free agency. We got our season predictions. We got our weekly recap. So you're going to be seeing a lot of us. So follow us on Facebook at Fantasyholics, and we actually have a new Facebook page, Fantasy Forum, where you guys can come in and that's where you guys can kind of just shoot the shit. Fantasyholics is where you're going to get all your main meat potatoes. That's where you're going to get all your news. Fantasy Forum is kind of for you guys to just come in and have a chat with us and drop all your news and whatever you want to talk about. Like I said earlier, we have our website is out now. It's thefantasyholics.com. We got merchandise on there, so if you want to look into that, we are constantly going to be updating it with new articles. Our rankings are going to go up. if you followed us before, as when we were the fantasy football fraternity, we were just covering basically football. Now we're covering all sports. And unfortunately, at the time, sports are kind of at a halt, but we're still going to be talking about them. So give us some follows, give us some likes, check out our Twitter.
Yes,
which-
I was just going to say the Twitter.
Yes. And Jordan, you actually have to take this one over because I forgot the name again.
At
Fantasy
Fantasy
Holics
Holics 1.
Okay, at Fantasy Holics 1. So check out
All right,
Twitter,
Jordan.
check out Facebook, and that's it. So we'll see you guys next episode.
Right, boys. Thanks for watching.
Peace.